Have you ever been walking down the street, minding your own business, when suddenly someone hurls an insult your way? That gut-wrenching moment when your heart races, your face flushes, and every fiber of your being wants to lash out in response? We've all been there. But what if I told you that the way most of us react to insults is exactly what gives others power over us? Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you handle a conflict in your daily life. In a world where instant reactions and emotional outbursts are the norm, there exists an ancient wisdom that stands in stark contrast to our modern instincts. Niccolo Machiavelli, often misunderstood as merely teaching manipulation and cunning, actually offered profound insights into human psychology that remain surprisingly relevant today. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future videos. When someone insults you on the street, your immediate reaction, the one society almost expects from you, is to defend yourself, perhaps even counterattack with equal or greater force. It feels natural, doesn't it? Almost as if standing your ground is the only way to preserve your dignity. But has this approach ever actually made you feel better in the long run? What if the true power move isn't to react at all? What if Machiavelli was onto something revolutionary when he suggested that our emotional reactions to insults are precisely what hand over our personal power to others? Think about it for a moment. Has this ever happened to you? Someone says something cutting, and hours later you're still replaying the incident in your mind, thinking of all the clever comebacks you should have said? That mental real estate they're occupying, rent-free, is exactly what Machiavelli warned against. The great political philosopher understood something fundamental about human interaction. When you allow someone's words to disturb your inner peace, you've already lost the battle. You've given them control over your emotional state, your thoughts, and potentially even your actions. But learning to remain unaffected by others' negativity isn't about suppression or denial. It's not about pretending the insult didn't hurt. Rather, it's about understanding the profound power that comes with emotional sovereignty, the ability to choose your reactions rather than being held hostage by them. Imagine walking through life with such inner strength that others' attempts to diminish you simply bounce off, like raindrops off a well-oiled coat. That kind of power doesn't come from dominating others with clever retorts or aggressive comebacks. It comes from something much more profound. Don't just watch. Transform yourself. Subscribe now and turn Machiavelli's dark laws into your daily weapon. Hit the bell so you never miss a lesson in power. Do you know what happens when someone tries to insult you and you genuinely don't care? It's like watching them throw a boomerang into the void. There's this awkward moment where they're waiting for a reaction, and when nothing comes back, they're left holding all that negative energy they tried to project onto you. This mental mastery doesn't develop overnight. It's a transformative journey that begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. Think about it. When someone insults you, what's really happening? They're attempting to transfer their inner turmoil to you, hoping you'll carry it. But here's the hidden truth many overlook. You always have a choice in that moment. You can either accept the emotional package they're handing you or simply observe it being offered and walk away. I've witnessed this dynamic countless times in my own life. Years ago, I would absorb every criticism, every sideways comment, like it was my responsibility to react. The revelation came when I realized that my reactions were actually feeding the very behavior I wanted to stop. It was like discovering I had been unknowingly fueling a fire I was trying to extinguish. What fascinates me is how this indifference is often misinterpreted. People mistake it for weakness when it actually requires tremendous inner strength. It's the difference between being moved by every passing wind versus standing firm like a mountain. And this doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionless. Quite the opposite. When you're no longer depleting your energy on needless reactions, you have more authentic connection to offer in relationships that actually matter. The impact of this mindset extends far beyond handling insults. It reshapes how you approach challenges, make decisions, and navigate conflicts. You begin to operate from a place of genuine security rather than defensive posturing. I found that people who master this skill tend to achieve more with less stress, simply because they're not constantly getting sidetracked by other people's attempts to provoke them. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this mental stillness creates space for something far more valuable than the temporary satisfaction of a comeback. When you're no longer constantly reacting, you gain the ability to actually listen, not just to others, but to your own intuition. This is where true power emerges. If you're recognizing this pattern in your own life right now, type "taking back my power" in the comments. I'd love to know how many of you are on this journey of reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because embracing these principles requires a fundamental mindset shift. When you expect disrespect, you're not being pessimistic. You're being strategically prepared. Think of it as emotional armor that protects you from the unpredictable nature of human interactions. In my journey implementing this approach, I discovered something fascinating. When you anticipate potential disrespect, your responses become calculated rather than reactive. This creates an interesting psychological dynamic where you're never caught off guard. People who might try to undermine you suddenly find themselves facing someone who isn't emotionally destabilized by their tactics. The transformation happens internally. First, you begin to observe social dynamics from a more detached perspective, almost like watching a chess match unfold. Those small slights that once would have consumed your thoughts for days, they barely register now. This connects deeply with the power of silence I mentioned earlier. Silence isn't just about not speaking, it's about controlling the conversational landscape. When someone expects a reaction and receives calculated silence instead, it creates a void they often feel compelled to fill. I've witnessed powerful executives crack under the pressure of silence, revealing intentions and information they never planned to share. The hidden truth behind mastering silence is that it functions as both shield and sword. It protects your inner thoughts while simultaneously applying pressure to others. This dual function makes it perhaps the most versatile tool in human interaction. What's particularly remarkable is how these principles mirror ancient wisdom. From Sun Tzu's Art of War to Stoic philosophy, the most influential thinkers throughout history understood that emotional self-governance creates power. They recognized that reactions are where we lose control, while responses are where we maintain it. The impact of implementing these strategies extends far beyond avoiding momentary discomfort. It reshapes your entire social experience. Relationships begin to function on your terms, rather than through emotional manipulation. Decision-making improves because you're operating from a place of strategic clarity, rather than emotional reactivity. Join the circle of the untouchable. Subscribe and activate the bell to stay ahead of everyone still reacting while you rise in calm control. Behind the scenes of every powerful negotiation or successful confrontation, you'll find these principles at work. The person who appears unaffected by attempts to distract or derail them holds an invisible advantage. It's like having access to a different playing field that others don't even know exists. If you've ever found yourself nodding along as I explain these concepts, understanding them intuitively, even if you haven't formally practiced them, type "strategic silence" in the comments. Now let me show you how these principles connect to something even more powerful. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a fascinating transformation that happens when you truly master emotional control. It's not just about maintaining composure, it's about fundamentally altering how others perceive and interact with you. Think about someone who consistently remains unshakable regardless of the chaos around them. There's something almost magnetic about their presence, isn't there? This is the hidden power of emotional mastery. When you refuse to be baited into emotional reactions, you're actually establishing a pattern of strength that becomes part of your identity. Consider this revelation. Every time you defend yourself against accusations or criticisms, you're inadvertently giving those words power. It's as though you're saying, "This attack matters enough for me to address it." But what if instead you simply acknowledged the comment with a slight nod or smile and continued on your path? The impact is remarkable. You've just demonstrated that their words lack the power to disturb your inner peace. This journey toward emotional control isn't one of suppression, but rather of transformation. You're not ignoring your emotions. You're choosing when and how they deserve expression. The most powerful people in any room aren't those who never feel anger, anxiety, or frustration. They're the ones who experience these emotions fully, but decide whether those feelings deserve external expression. Behind the scenes of every great leader, negotiator, or influential figure is this same core principle. The person who controls their emotional state controls the interaction. When someone attempts to provoke you and meets only calm, confidence, they face a decision, escalate further, which makes them appear increasingly unreasonable, or adjust to your level of composure. The mindset shift required here is understanding that your reactions are always a choice. Even when someone delivers the most cutting remark designed specifically to hurt you, the decision about how that comment affects your external behavior remains entirely yours. This realization is incredibly liberating. What's particularly valuable about this approach is how it creates a buffer zone between external events and your internal state. You begin developing what I call an emotional observation deck, a mental space where you can watch your feelings arise without immediately acting on them. If you're resonating with what I'm sharing, write "I choose my reactions" in the comments, because ultimately, that's the foundation of true emotional control. When you start to detach from the opinions others have about you, something remarkable happens in your inner landscape. This detachment isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about reclaiming your personal power. Think about how often your mood has shifted dramatically just because someone offered praise or criticism. That emotional roller coaster isn't just exhausting, it's a hidden surrender of your autonomy. The journey toward emotional sovereignty requires a fundamental mindset shift. You begin to recognize that your value doesn't increase with compliments nor decrease with criticism. This realization is incredibly liberating, like discovering you've been carrying unnecessary weight for years. When you no longer need others to validate your worth, you experience a form of freedom that few truly achieve in this hyper-connected world. What's fascinating is how we can actively train ourselves toward this emotional mastery. Our brains respond remarkably well to internal reward systems. When you maintain composure during challenging conversations or difficult feedback, try consciously acknowledging that strength. Perhaps take a moment to mentally praise your restraint, or even treat yourself to something small afterward. This creates a positive association with emotional control. Conversely, when you catch yourself overreacting, whether with excessive pride at compliments or defensive anger at criticism, implement a small consequence. Maybe it's a moment of reflection or briefly stepping away from something enjoyable. This isn't about punishment, but about gently steering your emotional responses in a healthier direction. This practice creates a profound transformation over time. Your baseline emotional state becomes more stable, less dependent on the ever-shifting opinions of others. You'll notice decisions becoming clearer when they're not clouded by concerns about how others might judge them. Relationships improve because you're engaging from a place of security rather than neediness. The revelation many don't discuss is how this emotional independence actually enhances genuine connection. When you're not constantly seeking validation, you can listen more authentically and express yourself more honestly. People sense this groundedness and are naturally drawn to it, not because you're trying to impress them, but precisely because you aren't. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how emotional detachment actually helps us make better decisions in crucial moments. The clarity that comes from not being swayed by potential praise or criticism opens up possibilities many never consider. If you're resonating with these ideas about emotional freedom, write "breaking free" in the comments below. The beauty of indifference lies in its subtle power, something I've witnessed transform not just interactions, but entire relationship dynamics. When someone throws an insult your way expecting to see you crumble, your calm "thank you" creates a fascinating psychological reversal. You're essentially denying them the emotional reward they sought, which often leads to their internal frustration rather than yours. Think about the hidden journey that happens when you master this response. Every time someone attempts to provoke you and fails, they're inadvertently strengthening your emotional resilience. It's a private transformation that occurs without fanfare, your mental fortitude quietly building while others remain unaware of the shift taking place. I've seen professionals use this approach to navigate toxic workplace environments where direct confrontation would have been career suicide. Instead of engaging with office politics or responding to passive-aggressive comments, they simply acknowledged the behavior without emotional attachment and redirected that energy toward exceptional work performance. The outcome? The antagonists eventually lost interest while these individuals secured promotions and opportunities. What makes this approach so revolutionary is how it fundamentally changes the power dynamic in any interaction. When someone insults you, they're essentially making a bid for control over your emotional state. By responding with indifference, you're silently communicating, "You don't have that kind of power over me." This revelation, that others cannot dictate your emotional responses unless you permit it, is profoundly liberating. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the neurological impact of choosing indifference. When you respond to negativity with emotional reactivity, your brain floods with stress hormones that actually impair your cognitive function. Conversely, when you respond with strategic indifference, you maintain access to your prefrontal cortex, the decision-making center of your brain, allowing you to make choices from a position of clarity rather than emotional hijacking. This isn't just about winning social encounters, it's about reclaiming your personal agency in a world that constantly attempts to pull your emotional strings. The decisions you make in these moments of potential conflict reshape your entire relationship with external validation and criticism. If you've ever experienced that moment where someone's attempt to upset you simply fell flat because you genuinely didn't care about their opinion, write in the comments, "I own my reactions," because that's exactly what you're doing when you master this approach. What people get wrong about this philosophy is mistaking strategic detachment for emotional emptiness. I'll tell you a hidden truth. The masters of this approach aren't cold. They're actually more conscious of their emotional investment than most. They don't avoid feelings. They simply choose where to place them with surgical precision. Look at how transformation happens in real relationships when this principle is applied. When someone wrongs you, the impulsive reaction is to feel personally diminished, to let the offense define your worth. But those who truly understand power recognize that their value isn't determined by others' actions. This mental shift creates an unshakable foundation that no external force can disturb. There's a remarkable paradox at work here. By caring less about validation from others, you actually enhance your ability to form meaningful connections. When your peace isn't perpetually held hostage by others' behaviors, you can engage more authentically without the constant background noise of insecurity and fear. I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens behind the scenes in your mind when you practice this principle. When someone insults you, your brain automatically generates two paths. The reactive one, fueled by ego, that demands immediate justice, and the calculated one that asks, does this require my energy? The journey between these paths is where true personal sovereignty is born. Remember that detachment isn't about suppressing your natural responses. It's about introducing a deliberate pause between stimulus and reaction. This pause becomes your power center, the space where you make decisions, rather than having them made for you by programming and impulse. What's fascinating is how this approach ripples through every aspect of your life. Once you master it in personal interactions, you'll notice how it enhances your professional decisions, your financial choices, even your physical health. The revelations continue to unfold as you practice, creating a compound effect that fundamentally changes how you navigate the world. The most profound impact comes when you realize that this isn't just a defensive strategy, it's an offensive one too. By conserving your emotional energy for what truly matters, you gain the ability to pursue your genuine priorities with unprecedented focus and clarity. If what I'm saying resonates with your own experiences, type strategic peace in the comments. Now, let's examine how this principle manifests in different cultural contexts. So, what's really happening? Here is a fundamental misunderstanding about how respect operates in human relationships. Think about the people you genuinely respect in your own life. Are they constantly seeking your approval? Are they bending over backwards to be liked? Of course not. The people we truly respect maintain their boundaries and demonstrate through their actions that they have self-respect first. This is the hidden truth that many miss in their journey toward personal growth. When you prioritize being liked over being respected, you're essentially telling the world that external validation matters more than your internal compass. And ironically, this desperation to be liked almost always backfires. Let me share something transformative. Respect isn't just given freely. It's earned through consistency and integrity. When you demonstrate that you can control your emotional responses, that you can stand firm in your values regardless of external pressure, people naturally begin to respect you. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. The independence factor is crucial here. Those who constantly seek permission or validation before making decisions signal dependency. But when you can thoughtfully make choices and stand by them, even when they're unpopular, you signal to others that your self-worth isn't contingent on their approval. This mindset shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires deliberate practice of these laws we've discussed. Each one builds upon the others, creating a foundation of unshakable confidence that doesn't crumble when challenged. The unbothered person isn't unbothered because they don't care. They're unbothered because they've developed the resilience to navigate life's complexities without being derailed by others' opinions. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these principles manifest in real-world scenarios, because understanding these laws intellectually is just the beginning. The real power comes when you can apply them in those challenging moments when your buttons get pushed. Think about that coworker who always tries to get under your skin, or that family member who knows exactly what to say to trigger you. These aren't just annoying interactions, they're opportunities to practice these laws in real time. They're the training ground where theoretical knowledge becomes practical wisdom. The revelation here is that becoming unbothered isn't about becoming cold or detached from others. It's actually about developing such a strong inner core that you can remain fully engaged with the world while not being controlled by it. It's about having the freedom to choose your responses rather than being at the mercy of your reactions. If what I've shared resonates with your experiences, type inner strength over external validation in the comments. I'd love to know which of these laws you find most challenging to implement in your daily life. When someone disrespects you, your brain immediately releases stress hormones. That flood of cortisol and adrenaline can hijack your rational thinking in mere seconds. This biological response is what makes disrespect so potent. It's designed to destabilize you. But here's where the transformation begins. By expecting disrespect, you're creating mental antibodies against its effect. You're not becoming cynical, you're becoming prepared. Think about martial artists. They don't train expecting to never get hit. They train knowing attacks will come, which allows them to respond with clarity rather than shock. This mental preparation is your invisible armor in social situations. Now, let's explore the profound power behind Law 2, silence. When you remain silent in the face of disrespect, something fascinating happens in the social dynamic. The person who tried to provoke you enters a psychological vacuum. They threw a punch that hit nothing but air, and that emptiness creates immediate confusion. Silence is not passive, it's actually one of the most active choices you can make. It communicates strength without a single word. Most people underestimate this power because we're culturally conditioned to believe we must verbally defend ourselves. But consider historical figures who mastered this art, from stoic leaders to strategic negotiators. They understood that silence creates a space that others feel compelled to fill, often to their disadvantage. I remember witnessing this firsthand during a heated business negotiation. My colleague was openly insulted about his proposal, and everyone at the table tensed up, waiting for the inevitable argument. Instead, he simply maintained eye contact, took a slow sip of water, and remained quiet. The effect was immediate. The aggressor became visibly uncomfortable, started backtracking, and eventually offered better terms than we had initially hoped for. This silence doesn't come from weakness or fear. It stems from the profound understanding that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. When you truly internalize this, silence becomes not just a strategy, but a natural extension of your self-confidence. These first two laws work in tandem to create what I call a respect shield, a psychological boundary that protects your inner peace while simultaneously commanding respect from others. The journey to mastering these laws isn't always smooth, but the internal shifts they create have ripple effects across every relationship in your life. Now, I want to go even deeper into how these principles manifest in real-world scenarios, especially when the stakes are high and emotions are running hot. If these first two laws resonate with your experiences, write "Building My Shield" in the comments. I'd love to know who's on this journey of mastering respect. Law 3 reminds us that controlling our emotions isn't just about appearing strong. It's about maintaining our internal power. Think about it. When someone lashes out, throws a tantrum, or becomes visibly upset during a confrontation, what's your immediate impression? Usually, we sense weakness, lack of control, or vulnerability. The person who remains composed while others lose their cool automatically gains the upper hand. This emotional intelligence represents a crucial transformation in how we navigate social dynamics. I've witnessed countless interactions where the person who maintained their composure, even when they had every right to be angry, emerged as the true authority in the room. Their restraint wasn't just admirable, it was strategic. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic with Law 4, which builds brilliantly upon the foundation of emotional control. Have you ever noticed how desperately defending yourself against accusations often makes you look guilty, even when you're innocent? There's a hidden truth here that most people miss. Over-explanation triggers suspicion. When someone accuses you of something, and you respond with a lengthy, detailed defense, you're inadvertently giving power to their accusation. Instead, the law suggests either dismissing the comment with humor, reframing it as a compliment, or simply acknowledging it without emotional attachment. Interesting perspective can be more powerful than a paragraph of justification. This principle works because our brains are wired to detect inconsistencies. When someone protests too much, we instinctively wonder why they're working so hard to convince us. Consider historical figures who mastered this technique. When accused, they often responded with such brevity and confidence that the accusations lost all momentum. The journey toward mastering these laws isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about understanding the psychological terrain of human interaction. By refusing to be baited into emotional reactions or desperate self-defense, you maintain your position of strength in any exchange. These principles apply beyond personal confrontations. They extend to professional settings, social media interactions, and even family dynamics. The person who can hear criticism without immediately jumping to defend themselves possesses a rare form of social intelligence that commands respect. If you've ever experienced the power of staying calm when someone tried to provoke you, or if you've noticed how over-explaining made a situation worse, drop a comment saying, "I've seen this work," and share your observation. This fundamental shift in perspective really changes everything. When you detach from others' opinions, it's not about becoming indifferent, it's about liberation. I've noticed that many of us unknowingly build a mental prison where every glance, comment, or social media interaction becomes a judgment on our worth. But here's the revelation that transformed my approach. Opinions are merely reflections of the person giving them, shaped by their unique experiences, fears, and limitations. Think about it. When someone criticizes your work, they're viewing it through their particular lens of understanding. Their response says more about their journey than your destination. This awareness creates a powerful mindset shift that affects every decision you make going forward. Now, implementing the systematic approach of rewards and discipline might sound rigid, but it's actually quite transformative. The hidden truth here is that our minds respond remarkably well to consistent frameworks. When you consciously create a personal system where calmness is rewarded and reactivity is gently discouraged, you're essentially reprogramming your default settings. I discovered this works particularly well during the inevitable challenges of parenting. Rather than immediately reacting to my child's outburst with my own emotional response, I created a small ritual, taking 3 deep breaths before speaking. The reward? A moment of clarity that prevented countless escalations. The discipline? Holding myself accountable by tracking. Days when I successfully maintained this practice. The beauty of this system is its flexibility. Your version might look entirely different, perhaps involving physical exercise as a reward for emotional regulation, or a 5-minute meditation after successfully navigating a triggering conversation at work. The structure creates freedom rather than constraint. What's particularly fascinating is how this systematic approach begins to influence areas of life beyond parenting. Business decisions, creative projects, even casual conversations start to benefit from this intentional framework. The ripple effect can be profound, touching relationships you didn't even realize needed attention. The underlying principle connecting these laws is the recognition of our power to choose our responses rather than being at the mercy of automatic reactions. This distinction between conscious choice and unconscious pattern represents the dividing line between those who master their emotional landscape and those who remain perpetually subject to its unpredictable weather. Now, I want to go even deeper into the practical applications of these principles in daily life, especially in those moments when maintaining composure feels nearly impossible. If any of these insights have resonated with your own experiences, write mindful choice in the comments. I'd love to know which aspects of emotional regulation you're currently working on. The art of deflection is something I've witnessed transform people's lives in the most unexpected ways. When someone provokes you with the clear intent to rile you up, your natural response system kicks into high gear. Heart racing, thoughts spiraling, emotions flooding. But there's a hidden revelation here that most people miss entirely. Indifference is actually your most powerful weapon in these moments. Let me share something that changed my perspective forever. I once watched a friend handle an aggressive colleague who was constantly trying to undermine him during meetings. Instead of engaging in the battle this person clearly wanted, my friend would simply acknowledge the comment with a slight nod and continue his presentation as if the barb meant nothing. The transformation was remarkable. Within weeks, the provocations stopped completely. The aggressor, deprived of the emotional reaction they sought, simply gave up the pursuit. This journey toward emotional freedom isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's about reclaiming your mental space. When you refuse to give someone the satisfaction of seeing you rattled, you maintain complete ownership of your emotional landscape. This ownership is priceless in a world where attention and reaction have become commodities. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how you can actually harness negative energy as fuel for your own growth. This is where the real mindset shift happens. When someone insults your work, your appearance, or your ideas, there's an opportunity hidden within that painful moment, a chance to transform that negativity into productive power. Consider the journey of some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. Many built empires precisely because critics told them their ideas would never work. They took those words, which were intended to diminish them, and used them as rocket fuel. This alchemical process of converting negativity into motivation represents one of the most potent psychological tools available to us. The impact of redirecting rather than resisting is profound. When you channel the emotional energy from an insult into improving yourself or your work, you're not just deflecting the attack, you're actually leveraging it. It's like learning a martial art where you use your opponent's force against them, but in this case, to elevate yourself rather than harm them. Behind every great achievement often lies a story of someone who refused to be defined by criticism and instead used it as a clarifying force to sharpen their resolve and refine their approach. The revelation comes when you realize that the people who try to tear you down are actually providing you with free information, sometimes about your blind spots, sometimes about their own insecurities. The beauty of this approach is that it completely disarms those who wish to harm you with words. When your response to an attack is consistent improvement, you transform what was meant as a weapon into a tool for your benefit. If this perspective on handling criticism resonates with you, write in the comments, turning arrows into arrows pointing forward, because that's exactly what we're doing when we redirect negativity into growth. While Law 9 urges strategic revenge, Law 10 takes us into a more internal transformation. The essence here is mastering emotional detachment, which might sound cold on the surface, but reveals profound wisdom beneath. When we allow others' opinions and behaviors to dictate our emotional state, we're essentially handing over the keys to our inner kingdom. Think about it. How much mental real estate do you sacrifice daily to worrying about others' perceptions? This emotional attachment creates invisible chains that limit your freedom. The untouchable quality Green describes isn't about building walls, but rather about maintaining your center regardless of external storms. I've personally witnessed the revelation that comes when someone first experiences this detachment during times of crisis. It's like discovering a hidden superpower. the ability to observe chaotic situations with clarity rather than being swept away by them. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless, quite the opposite. Your emotions become tools under your command rather than forces controlling you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this pattern of power. Law 11 introduces a truth that might initially feel uncomfortable but proves invaluable. Learn to keep people dependent on you. This principle reveals the hidden architecture of influence in any organization or relationship. The most secure position isn't always the highest, but rather the one most integrated into the system. Consider how indispensable figures often wield more practical power than their superiors. By cultivating unique skills, specialized knowledge, or exclusive relationships, you create a gravitational field that pulls others into your orbit. This isn't manipulation, but rather understanding the fundamental dynamics of human interdependence. The most successful leaders instinctively grasp this concept. They position themselves as essential nodes in their networks, whether in business, politics, or social circles. Your journey toward mastering power dynamics requires recognizing these dependencies and consciously cultivating them, rather than leaving them to chance. What's fascinating is how this principle intersects with authenticity. The most sustainable dependencies aren't built on deception, but on genuine value creation. When you truly become extraordinary at something others need, you transform from expendable to essential. This shift represents one of the most significant power transitions available to anyone seeking to secure their position. If you've experienced this dynamic shift in your own life, that moment when you realized your unique value made others dependent on your contributions, write "value recognized" in the comments. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. These Machiavellian principles we're exploring aren't just theoretical concepts to admire from a distance. They're transformation tools waiting to be activated in your daily life. Think about the mental strength we discussed. When you practice strategic indifference in situations where you'd normally react emotionally, you're essentially rewiring your brain's response patterns. I've noticed in my own journey that the most powerful shift happens when you start applying these principles to seemingly insignificant daily interactions. That colleague who always tries to provoke an emotional response, that's your training ground. That business negotiation where showing too much enthusiasm might weaken your position, another perfect opportunity. What fascinates me is how these principles reveal hidden truths about human psychology. When you remain calm, while others expect an emotional outburst, you create a psychological imbalance that often works in your favor. It's not about manipulating others, it's about understanding the predictable patterns of human behavior and positioning yourself advantageously within them. The real impact comes when you start recognizing the power dynamics in every interaction. Most people operate on autopilot, responding to situations with predictable emotional patterns. When you step outside this reactive cycle, you gain a perspective that few others possess. This mental positioning becomes your competitive edge in negotiations, relationships, and career advancements. I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what happens beneath the surface when you implement these strategies consistently. There's a fascinating psychological ripple effect. As you develop strategic indifference, people around you begin to value your attention more highly. Your opinions carry greater weight precisely because you don't freely give them away. Your time becomes more respected because you've demonstrated it has value. But here's something rarely discussed. This path requires embracing occasional discomfort. There will be moments when your instinct screams at you to respond emotionally, to defend yourself, to seek approval. The growth happens in those precise moments when you choose strategic restraint instead of emotional gratification. It's in these decision points that your Machiavellian mindset is either strengthened or weakened. Remember that what we're discussing here isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about gaining the freedom to choose your responses rather than being driven by them. The emotional intelligence developed through these practices actually enhances your ability to connect authentically with others, but on your terms, when it serves your purpose. If what I'm saying resonates with your experiences or aspirations, write strategic mind in the comments. I'd love to know who's walking this path of deliberate self-mastery. The journey of mastering oneself through these ancient principles requires patience that most modern people have forgotten how to cultivate. When I first encountered these laws, I made the mistake of trying to implement all of them simultaneously. The result, frustration and inconsistent progress. This is why I emphasize practicing each law progressively. It's not a race, but a transformation that unfolds naturally when given the proper space and time. Consider the law of maintaining silence and calmness under provocation. This particular principle hit me personally during a business negotiation where my partner deliberately attempted to provoke an emotional response. In that moment, I remembered this law, took a deep breath, and remained composed. The shift in power was immediate and palpable. My silence created an unexpected vacuum that my opponent couldn't navigate, ultimately leading to terms that favored my position. What's fascinating about this wisdom is how it contradicts our cultural programming. We're taught that immediate responses demonstrate quick thinking and confidence, yet these ancient teachings reveal the hidden truth. Your silence can communicate more authority than any hastily chosen words. This is the paradox many overlook. Sometimes your greatest power lies in what you choose not to do. The practical application extends beyond business into our personal relationships. When someone pushes your buttons during an argument, your initial impulse is to defend yourself vigorously. However, by calmly acknowledging their perspective without immediate reaction, you create space for real understanding rather than escalation. I've witnessed entire relationship dynamics shift through the consistent application of this single principle. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these laws interconnect with our daily decision-making. Each choice to exercise restraint becomes easier with practice, creating a compounding effect on your personal development. The wisdom doesn't just change how others perceive you, it fundamentally alters how you perceive yourself. What's particularly revealing is that these ancient principles anticipated modern psychological research on emotional regulation and social dynamics by centuries. The masters who codified these laws understood human nature at a profound level that we're only beginning to scientifically validate today. They recognized that true influence comes not from external force, but from internal mastery. If you've ever experienced that moment of clarity after choosing patience over impulsivity, write in the comments, "Silence became my strength." I'd love to hear about your own experiences with this principle. This journey toward unshakable power is not just about avoiding conflict, it's about transcending it entirely. When someone tries to provoke you, they're essentially asking you to step into their reality, to play by their emotional rules. But here's the profound revelation that changed everything for me. You always have the choice to decline this invitation. I remember when I first began practicing this mindset shift, the initial challenge wasn't external. It was the internal battle against my own conditioned responses. We're programmed from childhood to defend ourselves, to prove others wrong, to seek validation through winning arguments. Breaking free from these deeply rooted patterns requires something more powerful than willpower. It requires a fundamental identity transformation. Think about the people you genuinely admire. They possess a certain gravitational pull, don't they? Their confidence doesn't need to announce itself because it's not performative. It's an authentic expression of inner alignment. This is the hidden truth behind true power. It's not something you display, but something you embody. The most liberating aspect of this journey is realizing that every interaction becomes a conscious choice rather than an automatic reaction. When someone attempts to drag you into their drama, you can pause, breathe, and ask yourself, does engaging with this serve my highest purpose? This simple question creates a decisive moment, a moment where you reclaim your power. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's a fascinating psychological dimension at play. When you consistently refuse to be baited into emotional reactivity, something remarkable happens around you. People begin to relate to you differently. Those who feed off drama may initially increase their efforts to provoke you, but eventually they'll either transform how they interact with you or naturally distance themselves from your sphere. This ripple effect creates what I call a sanctuary of presence around you, a space where meaningful connections can flourish while superficial provocations simply dissolve. The impact extends far beyond just feeling better in the moment. It fundamentally alters the trajectory of your relationships and opportunities. But make no mistake, this isn't about becoming emotionless or detached. Quite the opposite. True power allows you to feel everything deeply while choosing your response with intention. You can acknowledge hurt, disappointment, or frustration without being consumed by it. You can honor your emotions without letting them hijack your behavior. As you practice this approach, you'll notice subtle shifts in how you carry yourself, how you speak, and especially how you listen. Your entire presence communicates something profound to others without saying a word. It's as if people can sense the depth of the inner work you've done. If what I'm sharing resonates with you, write "inner power" in the comments. I'd love to know who's walking this path alongside me. Self-control is lauded as a form of sovereignty, symbolizing the ultimate personal strength. Each law is designed to foster control over personal reactions and reinforce emotional independence. When we examine our lives honestly, we can see how often emotional reactivity has derailed our intentions and sabotaged our progress. This journey toward mastering emotional responses isn't just about suppression, it's about transformation. The 48 laws of power offer a framework, but the real work happens in the laboratory of daily interactions. Consider the subtle dance of power that happens in every conversation. When someone criticizes your work and your immediate instinct is defensive anger, what's really at stake? Behind that reaction lies a vulnerability that others can exploit. By developing the capacity to pause before responding, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're reclaiming ownership of your emotional terrain. The hidden truth many don't recognize is that emotional self-mastery creates a fascinating paradox. The more control you have over your responses, the more freedom you experience. This isn't about becoming calculating or manipulative. It's about establishing boundaries around your most precious resource, your peace of mind. I've witnessed remarkable shifts in both personal and professional relationships when people begin implementing these principles. One particularly powerful revelation comes when practicing Law 36, disdain things you cannot have. The psychological impact of wanting what remains out of reach creates an ongoing cycle of dissatisfaction that ripples through every aspect of life. By consciously redirecting attention away from unattainable desires, we recalibrate our internal compass toward achievable goals. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these principles manifest specifically in high-stakes environments. The boardroom, for instance, becomes a theater where emotional control directly translates to negotiating power. Those who can maintain composure while others grow agitated hold a distinct advantage, not because they're unfeeling, but because they've learned to channel their emotions strategically rather than reactively. What's particularly fascinating is how these dynamics operate. Beneath conscious awareness, most people are responding to subtle cues and triggers without realizing how predictable their behaviors have become. Breaking free from these patterns requires first acknowledging their existence, a surprisingly difficult step that many aren't prepared to take. The journey toward emotional intelligence isn't linear. You'll experience breakthroughs followed by humbling moments where old patterns reassert themselves. This cyclical process of growth, setback, and renewed commitment is where the real development happens. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to practice these principles in increasingly nuanced ways. If any of these observations resonate with your own experience navigating complex relationships, type mindful power in the comments. I'd love to know who's actively working on developing these capacities. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding Machiavellian principles isn't just about manipulation, it's about personal sovereignty. When we learn to navigate social structures with greater awareness, we're actually reclaiming our power in a world that often attempts to diminish it. Think about the last time you were in a situation where you felt powerless, perhaps in a negotiation, a relationship conflict, or even a simple disagreement with a friend. That feeling of being cornered likely stemmed from not recognizing the hidden dynamics at play. The journey toward mastering these principles often begins with an uncomfortable revelation. Much of what we consider natural in social interactions is actually carefully choreographed influence. The people who seem to effortlessly climb corporate ladders or maintain magnetic social circles aren't necessarily more talented. They're simply fluent in the unspoken language of power dynamics. What's fascinating is how this understanding creates ripple effects throughout your entire life. Once you begin recognizing these patterns, you can't unsee them. You'll notice the subtle dominance displays in meetings, the strategic vulnerability some people deploy to gain trust, and the careful information management practiced by those in positions of influence. This heightened awareness becomes your shield against manipulation and your pathway to authentic connection. The transformation often happens in stages. At first, there's resistance. Many people feel that acknowledging these dynamics means embracing cynicism, but that's a fundamental misunderstanding. True power doesn't come from cynically manipulating others. It comes from refusing to be unconsciously manipulated yourself. By bringing these hidden truths into your conscious awareness, you're actually creating the possibility for more genuine relationships built on mutual respect, rather than unacknowledged power plays. Behind the scenes of every successful negotiation, every promotion, every meaningful relationship, lies this understanding of human nature. The most respected leaders aren't those who deny these realities, but those who navigate them with integrity. They understand that influence doesn't require deception. It requires clarity about human motivation and behavior. The impact of this mindset shift extends beyond your professional life. When you understand the currency of social exchange, how respect is earned, how trust is built, how decisions are really made, you gain the freedom to design your social world rather than merely react to it. This isn't about becoming calculating, it's about becoming conscious. If you're finding these ideas resonating with your experiences, write in the comments. Power with integrity. I'd love to know how many of you see the connection between understanding influence and developing stronger personal ethics. What truly separates those who are untouchable from those who are blown away by life's challenges isn't luck or circumstances, it's their inner framework. I've observed this transformation in my own journey and in the lives of others who've mastered this mindset. When you internalize that no external force can dictate your emotional state without your permission, something profound shifts within your reality. Consider how many decisions we make from a place of reactivity rather than intentional response. When someone criticizes your work, do you immediately feel the need to defend yourself or prove them wrong? That's the reactive path, and it transfers your power directly to them. The untouchable individual instead pauses, breathes through that initial sting, and chooses their response from a place of centeredness. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling, quite the opposite. It's about developing emotional intelligence so refined that you can feel deeply while maintaining your equilibrium. I remember speaking with a CEO who transformed her struggling company during a market crash. When I asked about her composure during that period, she shared a revelation that stuck with me. I realized I could acknowledge the gravity of our situation without becoming its victim. The moment I separated circumstance from identity, I found clarity. The hidden truth behind becoming untouchable is that it's not about building impenetrable walls. It's about creating a core so solid that you can remain open to the world without being destabilized by it. This is where daily affirmations become powerful tools for recalibrating your subconscious. Statements like, "I choose my responses consciously, and my worth is inherent, not circumstantial," aren't just pretty words. They're deliberate programming for your mind. What fascinates me most about this mindset shift is how it impacts not just your emotional state, but your actual outcomes. When you respond rather than react, you access the full capacity of your intelligence. Your decisions come from wisdom rather than fear. People begin to respect your boundaries naturally because they sense the quiet strength behind them. Think of it as the difference between a tree that breaks in the storm and one that bends with flexibility while remaining rooted. Both experience the same wind, but their relationship with that force determines their survival. The untouchable person has mastered this art of flexible strength. They feel the emotional weather but aren't uprooted by it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this mindset creates ripple effects throughout every relationship in your life. Because becoming untouchable doesn't just change how you feel, it fundamentally alters how others interact with you. If any of these principles have resonated with your personal experiences, write "inner strength" in the comments. I'm curious to know how many of you have already been developing this quality, perhaps without naming it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because mastering your internal state isn't just a nice philosophy, it's the hidden foundation for everything else in your life. Think about the last time you felt completely overwhelmed by circumstances beyond your control. Maybe it was a project deadline, relationship tension, or simply the daily news cycle bombarding you with reasons to feel anxious. In those moments, your external realities seem to dictate your internal experience. But here's the revelation that changed everything for me. The space between stimulus and response is where our true power lies. This internal mastery I'm describing isn't about ignoring reality or toxic positivity. It's about developing the mental infrastructure that allows you to navigate chaos without becoming chaotic yourself. The transformation begins when you recognize that your nervous system responds to your thoughts about events more strongly than to the events themselves. This understanding creates a doorway to freedom that most people never walk through. They remain reactive, constantly tossed about by circumstances, wondering why life feels so overwhelming. What's fascinating is how this journey of internal mastery creates ripple effects in your external world. When you're no longer consumed by emotional reactions, you make clearer decisions. Your relationships improve because you're bringing your best self to interactions rather than your triggered self. Your work becomes more focused and meaningful. The common thread connecting highly effective individuals isn't their circumstances. It's their ability to maintain inner clarity regardless of external pressure. Behind the scenes of every significant achievement is someone who learned to operate from this centered place. This isn't mystical, it's neurological. Your brain physically changes through consistent practice of the techniques we've discussed. The pathways that once automatically led to stress responses begin to weaken, while new neural connections form that support resilience and clarity. The impact of this shift extends far beyond just feeling better. When you're not constantly drained by managing emotional reactions, you have more energy available for creativity, connection, and contribution. This is why internal mastery isn't selfish. It's actually the foundation for being of greater service to others and living with more purpose. What's particularly powerful about this approach is that it works regardless of your specific circumstances. Whether you're facing minor daily annoyances or major life challenges, the principles remain the same. The tools adapt to whatever situation you're navigating, giving you a consistent framework for maintaining your center amidst any storm. If something I've shared today resonates with your own experience, write internal freedom in the comments. I'd love to hear which aspects of this journey you connect with most strongly. Now, as we continue exploring this territory of personal sovereignty, if you've stayed with me through this exploration of internal mastery, you're clearly someone who understands that true transformation happens from the inside out. This journey we've been discussing isn't just another self-improvement technique. It's about reclaiming the essence of your personal power. I'd love to know which parts of this conversation resonated most deeply with you. Drop internal freedom in the comments if you're committed to this path of developing mental sovereignty regardless of external circumstances. If this approach to navigating life's challenges speaks to you, consider subscribing to continue this journey together. There's so much more to explore about building that robust internal foundation that keeps you steady when everything else feels uncertain. Leave this video a like if you found value in these ideas. It helps others discover these conversations that go beyond surface-level solutions. I've created a video that takes this concept even further, exploring the practical daily rituals that reinforce this internal mastery we've been discussing. Click right here and let's continue the conversation there.